And then I have a separate audio that I use in three, two, one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today, my guest is Brenda Farrugia. Did I pronounce that right,
You
Brenda?
did, you
I
did.
did. Of So Brilliant. Brenda is a transformational quantum energy healer with a natural ability to remove negative energy and spiritual attachments. Brenda's mission is to support those ready to liberate themselves from negative influences and elevate their consciousness. She offers practical, intuitive, relatable spiritual approaches to help you raise your vibration and unlock your full potential. So, today we will be discussing energy healing and what this means. And we're going to provide an introduction to beam therapy. Most of you guys who follow me, or ladies, most of you are ladies who follow me, know that I'm a big believer that wellness goes far beyond just those scientific research studies. And this is why I love to have authentic, real conversations with guests who are people that I vet out carefully because we know that spiritual can mean a lot of different things in this world of podcasting and social media. And I've gotten to know Brenda very, very well. And so I am welcoming Brenda to my show and introducing her to all of you. So, with that, welcome, Brenda. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sandy. It's a pleasure. I love what you do. A fellow light worker spreading good information.
Yeah, well, light worker, maybe start with that because a lot of people are seeing that and hearing that now on social media. And how did you become what you are today? It's got to be a process of evolution.
Yeah, I was born this way, but not realizing I came in with gifts. I just assumed everybody had them. It's really interesting because I do collect light workers and old souls. They seem to be attracted to my work. And I was a young child and I could see dark beings and I could see angels. And very, without getting too in depth into the story, because I could be here all day talking about it, I realized very young that when I was sad or hurt or in low vibration, I didn't know what that meant, but feeling wise, feeling sad, I could see dark entities. And when I was happy, I saw angels. I could hear angels and I could hear the dark talking to me when I was sad. So at a very young age, I used to tell my mother, oh no, the house is getting sad again. They're coming out. Mom, we need to get happy. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? Stop talking this way. People are going to think you're crazy. So, very young age, I learned about vibration, not realizing what it was. Happiness brought good stuff, sadness brought bad stuff. So, my training in my childhood was my training, and I believe all the traumatic events I went through have been a gift because when I sit with clients now, I've been through that, I've been through that, I get it. But it wasn't until my dog hurt herself. She was a whippet and she was running very fast and she broke her back in front of me, and it was horrific. I was pretty young at the time. And it was over a long weekend on Easter. It was on a Friday, on Good Friday. And I picked her up and I brought her home. And I said, Mom, Dad, it was late. So we called our vet and he says, there's nothing I can do for your dog. You're going to have to bring her to Guelph University. And Guelph University said, yeah, bring her in. So we put her on ice. It was really traumatic and horrific. And they told us, we don't know if we're going to be able to save your dog, but she's in the best care. So we're going to keep her comfortable and we'll make a decision if we'll operate on the Monday. So she was my best friend. So I was very sad. But that weekend, I was guided to, as I could always hear my angel speaking to me, a guide speaking to the team that works with me. And what they showed me to do was what now I understand is quantum healing. We're just putting a name to what I've always been able to do. They had me put pictures of her and me. And they showed me to hold my hands over and picture her and me in the highest, best but we're happy and running and playing. I spent pretty well the whole weekend with my hands over our pictures and imagining her back home safe. Well, I didn't even think about this, but when we got a call on Monday, they said, there's been a miracle. Your dog's back is healed. You can come pick her up. She'll never run again at 35 miles an hour, but she's going to walk fine. So we brought her home and they showed us her broken vertebrae and then a fused vertebrae. It
No.
was a miracle. That's what I set it out to. Didn't know that I had anything to do with that. It wasn't until I went through my journey, I got married, I was very connected and yet disconnected by my programming. So here I am married. No offense to the gentleman because I do love him for the lessons I learned, but it wasn't the best marriage. So a lot of things were falling apart in my life. And it wasn't until my body started to really break down where I realized something severely wrong. And I said to God, I obviously don't know what I'm doing, God. So I now surrender my life to service. So either take me out of this, and I might not wake up in the morning, or if I'm meant to do big things here, then show me what I need to do. The next morning I woke up. I was having severe kidney issues, and they told me I could die with them. So I woke up the next morning, and then synchronicity after synchronicity. Again, really cool story, but to fast forward, I changed jobs. I was invited to a party and they said there's a psychic that's going to be there. And I said, I don't do psychic readings because I always thought I was going to die. And they go, no, no, you don't have to be read. There's going to be 14 people there. Only 4 people are being read. I go to the party with people I don't know. And all of a sudden the psychic goes, one girl didn't show up. I always do 4. I need to read you. And I said, no, 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 I don't do that. She goes, I have a very important message. So I sat with her because she said, it's about your son. Now, my son was behavioral at the time. They were starting to think he's ADHD. I don't believe in drugs personally, but I was at wit's end. I didn't know what to do with him. She said, your son's very psychic. He's been bombarded with so much energy. He needs help. Get him beam therapy. And this is what we're going to talk about today. But what she also said to me, she goes, do you realize that you were born with a gift to heal people? And I see you healing your dog. I said, oh yeah, my dog, her back healed. She goes, that was you. I said, I never thought of that. And that opened me up to all those things I used to suppress, those gifts, because I didn't want to tell anyone because it was weird. So all along, I've been healing people because that's what I naturally do. And then I start to take great effort in myself. But first, it happened with my son getting beam therapy. Then I reached out to Dr. Beatty and said, what just happened with my son? How did he go from here to being such pain to being here level? And she goes, this is when you trust the love of God and everything, we can heal. And it's just interference. So she became my mentor for years, and now we're good friends. And she healed me, and she allowed me to understand my gifts more and more.
That's amazing. So how old were you when that happened to your dog?
It's funny because I seem to think I was about 14 years old.
Around there.
Yeah,
Okay.
about around
That's
14,
amazing.
15. And it wasn't until I was almost 40, like in my 30s, late 30s, that I realized that I had this gift. Although people would always say, Brenda, I'm with you, I feel better. And I could see people changing because I could see when I meet people, they're very heavy and dark. All of a sudden, they're lighter. I can
Mhm.
feel things leaving people. But I had no idea it was me. I used to ask my friends, guys, do you hear voices in your head? Do you hear this? Do you hear that? And they're like, no. And my mom always says, keep it quiet. When you have a gift, you don't even know you're different. You just assume everybody has it until you start to ask and investigate. But I went into a lot of programming, and the programming was you get married, you do as your husband says, and you don't matter. I just had a personal issue, and this is my theme, my challenge in this lifetime is self-love. I was born with a capacity to love everyone and everything, but the problem was I didn't know how to include myself in that. And my healing journey has been that learning self-love, learning boundaries. My gift, what I do is when I see anyone I see their divinity. I see who they truly are, and I imagine I know who they are. Now, the problem with that gift is if someone's coming to hurt me, because everyone has, like, there's overlays, there's lots of different things happening. Their divinity, everyone's connected to divinity. We're perfect just the way we are. But people have programs, people have karma, people have other things in the way. We're very multidimensional beings. So if someone who wants to hurt me, I would always think the love in my heart can override that. But it can't in all cases. Love is the answer, yes, but not everyone is ready to open up to their divinity. So I used to walk into danger, or I would be with people who want to hurt me because I always thought the love that I had could override it. And my learning lesson was not everyone's ready. Not everyone's ready for you. Not everyone's ready to open up. So you have to have more discernment, more prudence. And that's really been a learning lesson, boundaries, self-love. So it's an ongoing journey. And when I meet authentic people, I can now sense it. When I meet people who are there to hurt me, I now have a sense to see it for what it is. So my gift has been a blessing, but it's also been sometimes I think a curse because I didn't quite understand it.
I think when we're younger too, we don't understand a lot of parts to ourselves. But, to your point, now when I look back
Mhm.
at when I was younger, so I'm going to go back to early 20s. In university, one of my nicknames was Mama. I'm like, how the heck was I being called Mama? Like, we were out partying every night and having a good time, like true university students. But there was something within me where it was like, let me take care of you. Let me teach you. Let me, help you. Let me, right?
Yes.
And then I also wrote a lot of poetry when I was in university.
Oh, nice.
Then, like you said, and there's nothing wrong with getting married. I'm married now over 24 years. It's fine. Like, I'm not saying don't get married
Hmm.
but often we go through a time, like you said, programming, or we forget who we were. We forget that, like you said, like we kind of get all these programs and we pick them up as we age. And I'll never forget this one, Brenda. And, your spirituality is pure spirituality to me. It's not, oh, well, don't do this and don't do that. And I'm not knocking religions or anything. But
Hmm.
I do recall having an experience like I was born Catholic. I'm Croatian, right? Born Catholic. And it's nothing against Catholics. I just had an experience that made me look outward past the Catholic religion, if that makes sense. And I know this podcast isn't about religion. I just want to make that clear. But what I'm saying is, you go through all this programming and then things happen in our lives, and then you go, oh, okay, well, if I'm just going to get quiet, I'll go, yeah, I remember that. I meant to be more like bringing that back to my
Hmm.
life because that was pure. That was something that brought light to me. But so I love that you mention all that, but I have to ask you this question because people are going to probably want to know the answer. You say you see light in people. Do you also see dark in people? I have to ask that.
Absolutely, actually. And it's something I've had to deal with. I could be sitting with someone and really connecting to the divinity, but then there's a being, an attachment, something not so nice, also talking to me at the same time. So where it was kind of confusing was I could be talking to someone who's quite a nice person, but then there's a part of them, there's something in their field that is telling me something completely different, like, I hate you, Brenda, get the F away from here. And it was confusing because that's not who they are. And what I would do when I was speaking with those people is indirectly send love to the attachment, to the darkness, because you don't want to fight it. You send love and it dissolves. And sometimes while I'm talking to someone, it will actually leave their field. And I never told anyone because how do you explain that to the general public?
Yeah.
So I've been living this, like, it's kind of been confusing, but now I get it. I know who I am, I know why I'm here, and nothing scares me. But when you're younger and you're talking to someone and there's this, like, I would say I'm interpreting the energy as what I was taught. It looks like devil-like or a scary being because we interpret these things the way we can understand them.
Yeah.
So I see this thing that's not so nice looking at me and talking to me while I'm trying to have a conversation with this person who I know is a part of God. So that was a bit confusing. So yes, when I meet people and they can be the nicest people, there's attachments there, things they don't know that are interfering in their beautiful field. So yes, and on to your point about being Catholic, I grew up Catholic as well. And I
Yeah.
always questioned because I always knew God loves everyone and
Yeah.
everything.
Me too.
And I had a really beautiful conversation with a priest when I was younger. And I told them, I said, I love Jesus, I love God, and I come to church, but I don't believe what you guys say. And he said, Brenda, if you don't want to get kicked out of your Catholic school, just go with it. Keep what you're saying quiet. But he let me have private conversations with him instead of confessions. I told him, I don't need to confess to you. We had talks about the universe, and he was the coolest priest out there, but I was meant to meet him because he kind of guided me into saying, he always told me, you have a very pure heart, don't ever let anyone harden it, and be who you truly are. But
Oh,
then as I started to do this work more openly, my father, bless his soul, he's passed on, would say, Brenda, you can't do what you're doing. You're going to go to purgatory. You're going to burn in hell. I said, Dad, if helping humanity is going to do that, doesn't that not make sense to you? I need to follow my heart, and this is what I was born to do. So I honor all religions. I have clients from every religion. This is beyond religion. This is about we're all one.
yeah. Yeah, so interesting that you say that. I had one situation, actually a couple, with priests that were not good and
Mm,
very, very judgmental, and me walking out of confession feeling worse about myself instead of feeling better and feeling like I had a release, which is what confession is supposed to be,
maybe.
right?
Yeah.
And that was when I started to think like you, beyond that, beyond those constraints, because I always wondered, why do I need a conduit to believe in God and to pray and to do all those things and to confess if I want to confess, or what, like, why do I have to have a conduit? Yes, sometimes church gives you that
Mhm.
amazing peaceful feeling. When you go to a church and a choir is singing, it's a beautiful thing. But I just had to go beyond the judgment and the criticism.
Yeah.
Even when I started to get into energy and
Mhm.
studying energy, which my story a long time
Yeah.
ago. And I didn't like when a priest came and would bless my home and see, all these feng shui cures that were, I kind of carefully would hide them behind things. And then, there was judgment there. And I thought, well, this is all just for my peace and my good energy and my home. So I just never understood it. But, let's go beyond this, because I kind of touched on
Yeah.
energy, and a lot of people are hearing quantum energy. What exactly does quantum energy mean? How's that different? And by the way, I just want to
Yeah.
say, you know what,
Mhm.
to your point, it's interesting because I never really knew. I can look at somebody and just like you, have a conversation, have a great talk, but something, and I always thought it was the aura or
Mhm.
something. I could never identify what it was, but I could always get this feeling like something is amiss. but I could never identify it. So maybe, maybe you'll help me hone in on whole that whole talent because I think it's kind of cool because I couldn't identify it or
Mhm.
understand it, but I could feel it energetically. So maybe let's get into quantum energy and what that means.
Well, I'll compare quantum energy healing to Reiki because people know Reiki, right?
Yeah.
But quantum healing is looking more at it holistically that everything's energy. We're energy, everything's energy. And it's more about tapping into our mind, our thoughts, connecting to knowing that we have an innate smart system that God gave us where it can heal. So quantum healing to me is somewhat like Reiki, but Reiki is more regimented. Reiki is more the practitioner is going to bring in the energy and really follow a protocol to allow the energy to do what it needs to do. They're a conduit and they're not really participating. They're allowing the energy, which is a beautiful practice. Quantum healing is when I connect to someone. I see them in their magnificence, and these timelines open up, and I hold them in the best timeline and allow whatever needs. So it's a multiple of different things happening that brings that person to resonate with that higher version of themselves. So, you know, I think the label quantum healing really is knowing that we are all connected. We're all magnificent beings. We all have this divinity. We all have this magic or miraculous body, this intelligence that works. And now we are starting to tap into it. People are starting to realize when I think positive things happen. When I talk to my body, it heals. And we're starting
Mm.
to notice the mind body connection, which is in everything. If I eat healthy food, my body's going to feel good. When I meditate, I feel good. So it's kind of this whole holistic thing of understanding that we are energetic beings, that we have the power to really direct our lives. And when we do that, the energy that is around us moves and flows in the right ways.
Mm.
When I'm working with someone quantumly, I can do it by distance. I have a lot of international clients, and even if I've never met them, they get the same benefit if they were here. And Reiki can also be done quantumly because they're tapping in by distance. So, but a lot of people, when they want a Reiki session, they want the hands-on. It's more the traditional thing,
Mhm.
and nothing's wrong with that. It's a beautiful practice as well. But I believe human consciousness is increasing, and that's why we have this term quantum healing because people are starting to understand that healing can happen without us being physical because we're in that one field. We're all connected. You know this. When you meet someone and you love their energy, you don't know why or you just love the person, you want to be with them. It's because
Yes.
we're talking. Yes, talking is very limited. And then you meet someone and you pull back like, oh, because you're sensing their energy. So we are very energetic, we're energetic beings. And I think now humans are starting to tap into that. And we have this label of quantum healing. How did I heal my dog? Quantum healing. Why? Because I tapped into a reality where me and her were back. She was my best friend at the time. So how did that? I pulled her into that because that's what I knew to be true. So that's more. So quantum healing is like the new age term for energy healing. It's more of believing that everyone is powerful. For instance, I can hold the space for anyone, but I don't know the outcome a client's going to get because they have their own belief patterns, they have their own limitations, they have their own journey. So when I tap in to help someone, some people have these miraculous healings where their stage 4 cancer is gone and the doctor's like, we can't explain it. And then there's other people that it's a gradual thing. I don't take responsibility for the client's, 100% 180 turnaround or for their gradual, or perhaps they just feel lighter but don't know how because it's their journey. And that was part of my learning as well.
Yeah, but that's also, I know we're going to get into beam therapy, but you help to kind of clear some of those layers so that that person can do what they need to do to heal or to shine brighter or to find that career or to whatever it is that they're choosing. And I do want to mention, so I love that you touched on how you don't have to be in the same room as somebody. You can look at a photo, you can look at, and the reason I mention this is
Hmm.
because one thing I've learned in this space is that because I'm in a public space, I will sometimes say things that are somewhat polarizing, and some people will really not resonate and they will really not like me because I say something that they don't align with. And they will send a lot of negative energy my way just through video, just through photos, just through social media, whatever it is, just through my voice on this podcast.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important before we get into beam therapy, just to touch on, because people who are listening might want to know, well, I got all my, this is, by the way, Brenda,
Hmm.
I'll just tell you this. This is as an aside. When my children were little, now they have their own digital footprint. Okay.
Hmm.
But when they were little and Facebook just started, my husband, for whatever reason, he's like, do not put our children's pictures up there. And I was like, well, why not? Like, what's the big deal? I didn't really understand it. And I understood it from a, like the obvious, like there's who knows who's looking or who can crack through to your Facebook page and could be really, really dark
Hmm.
individuals. But then there was also people who are like, I don't like Sandy, or, oh, she's posting about her kids again, or, oh, right. So people don't think about that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it until my husband brought it to my attention. And then all of my pictures, when my kids were little, I took them off Facebook. And now it doesn't matter because they're no longer there anymore. They're not in that space.
Yes.
But can you give people a little bit of advice on how to protect yourself, your being in a digital world?
Yeah, I believe your husband had lots of wisdom to do that. Now, as I was going through my healing journey, because I had love for everyone and everything, I didn't understand why someone would do something malice on intentional. And it wasn't until I had some really like very intense training in Ohio. I did 8 days with a PhD doctor and a psychiatrist who dealt with dark energy. And the reason I did that is I was introduced to them by Dr. Beatty, and they're talking about dark things and what people do intentionally. I'm like, wait a second, I must be very naive, but I have a lot of clients who sit in front of me saying, do you believe in the evil eye? Do you believe in that? I'm like, no, because, why would someone do that? And I realized I'm missing something here. So I went into some deep training that I was innately brought to. And yes, everything is energy. Even if someone says, and I get this, I have a lot of people that don't like me and it doesn't matter, but I do protect myself from them. But even if someone says, oh, look at Brenda, look at what she's wearing today, that negative energy goes into my field. Just simple things. So people don't even know they're hurting us by saying negative things. But then there are those who actually, like I work with only true love and light. There are people on this planet that work with darkness and they
Mhm.
like it. So now you have someone who might, because you're in the public eye, people who are in the public eye, I always say you need a clearing. And I usually offer them something called Unity Field Healing One, which brings divine extra protection. Why is that? It's because you're in the forefront. You're pulling in negative energy from people without even wanting it. So there are things you can do. For one, always set the intention that you're surrounded by love and light. Go into a protection bubble. I know it sounds silly, but I think I mentioned to this, Sandy. In 2020, when I felt that darkness of COVID, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here. It's very dark. So my daughter, who was 5 at the time, was in my office, and I started playing with these bubbles of protection. And I was doing it in my head. And I was asking for a bubble of protection. All of a sudden, for me and my daughter, all of a sudden my daughter goes, Mom, why do you and I suddenly have bubbles around us? And I'm like, you can
No,
see it? Yeah, I didn't tell you the story. And I go, you
no.
can see it? And she's like, yeah. So I thought I could feel it, but she could see it. So in my mind, I asked for her to have a rainbow around hers. She said, Mom, my bubble now has a rainbow around it. And I am a big believer. Intention, anything that you intend happens. So now we have bubbles of protection. So I said, okay, going forward, let's see how long they last. So we did tests with it, we played with it. I have a science background. So when I fell into energy work back in the day, I played with energy work by distance, all that stuff, because I'm like, how does this quantum stuff work? And it wasn't until I was 100% confident before I started opening my gifts to the general public. And I thank all my guinea pigs over the years. And I think I gave thousands and thousands of free sessions because I want to know, how did that make you feel? What did you find in your life? I was very, very in tune to understanding all this. I haven't stopped learning. I learn something new every day. But the bubbles of protection work. They're powerful. And the more you believe in, the more powerful they are. So, how do you put a bubble of protection over your website, over your children's pictures if you choose to post them? I am like you. Because of the line of work I do and my understanding of energy, I do keep my family life very private for that reason. Because if they can't get to me because my light is too high,
Mhm.
they might be able to get to my kids. So no, no. So I put them in protection. I put myself in protection. I put my website into protection. So that's what I would suggest.
I love that. Okay. I've used this bubble of protection in the past when, one of my kids is going on a car drive that's a longer distance and you get that little bit of worry because they're going
Hmm.
for a long drive and they're not experienced or it's bad weather and I envision that entire bubble of protection over the car. Like I just envision it. And I think it helps me because
Hmm.
I feel like I'm doing something.
It's working. And how did you know to do that? Did you just innately know to do that?
No, I heard about it years ago.
Okay. All right.
It's Brenda,
Yeah.
like a lot of this stuff, it's like you and I talked about it. Anybody who's listening, you might resonate with parts of it. You might resonate with some. You might go, oh, yeah, I've heard that before. But when it's your time for that resonance for you to use it, it's like it'll click. And then you're going to go, oh, yeah, I remember that. It's like Brenda, we were talking 2 weeks ago, and she mentioned Ho'oponopono to me. And I'm like, huh, I heard about that years ago, but it didn't resonate with me at that time. And
Mhm.
now that's all I do. I take my Ho'oponopono walks and I thank Brenda for bringing it back into my life and reintroducing it because it resonates with me now. So the bubble, yeah, I had heard about it. And then now that you mentioned it, I'm like, I'm going to use that a little bit more. But I do want to, because you touched on that your background is in science.
Mhm.
Do you know, is there any science or research around quantum energy? I know there is around quantum fields.
Yeah. So, I did genetics and cell biology. And in my last year of university, I came across a book called The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton,
Yep,
right?
I've read that
And
twice.
I don't know, I was very intrigued by this book. And I'm like, they lied to us in university. They said this about the cell. And it kind of like woke up my world saying, why did they teach us like, this, we're so powerful and all that. So yes, there is so much more. And now, EFT, emotional freedom technique, do you know that one?
Is that is that tapping or
That's tapping, yes.
okay.
So
Yep.
tapping is actually getting into medical articles. Strangely, I met a ambulance driver who, a paramedic, who said they're taught EFT to calm a crowd down.
Wow.
And this is quite a few years ago, he said, because, you can affect the entire crowd. So before we get into some chaos, I'm tapping for the crowd, and then it's calmer and we get what we need to do done. And I believe, because I know Donna Eden, I know her husband, I forgot his name, but he's written a lot of articles to get EFT into more knowing, like to have that medical background, to get into the articles, the science articles. So there's a lot of things that are being done now. I don't believe that quantum healing is a hard fact yet,
Mm,
but there's a lot of experiments being done. There's a lot of research being done to prove it.
yeah.
So we're getting there. I get invited to do these like worldwide meditations because they're using this technology to measure the consciousness of the earth. And they'll do readings all over the world and they'll get the reading. Then we all go into meditation, and there's thousands of people on these calls. And then they'll check the devices and they'll see the vibration, the frequency of the world just went up. So there's a lot of science coming out there. I do corporate wellness, and bringing this esoteric stuff into corporate wellness is, kind of like a little woohoo for some. And I don't believe in woohoo because I think it's all science, but you have to bring it in slowly. But I always tell them there's the Math Heart Institute. There's tons of research being done there, and that's anyone can read it. You know, like attracts like. When I send out blessings, I get blessings. But when I send out hatred or sadness, I get it back. It's like a mirror. And there's a lot to prove in physics that we are in multiple realities. And I'm not going to get into that now. But if you want some really, like a simple, great book out there, when, let's say I want to buy a yellow Corvette. Let's just say I want a yellow Corvette. I'm looking at it. What do I start seeing everywhere? Yellow Corvettes I never
Yeah.
noticed before, because our thoughts then start to bring stuff in. It's a neat book called Synchronicity from Kirby Surprise. He's a physicist who writes about it. So I love quantum physics, and I read about it all the time, and it just resonates so deeply with me. But it is starting to tap into the openings of more research coming through.
Yeah. Well, there's no question now at this point that you can't argue that everything around us has a frequency, right? Which taps into energy. And so that they've already proven that, and how there's more and more research coming out on frequency medicine,
Mhm.
right? And healing frequencies. So even with light, with sound, and all of that kind of the way I look at it and the way I see it is it all kind of funnels into that whole world of quantum healing,
Mhm.
right? If even what was his name? Emoto, the water guy,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
right?
Beautiful, right? I've done that
Yes.
experiment. I've done it,
Yeah.
and it
So
works.
I talk to my plants. I
Hmm.
talk to the water. I know, like, listen, if you think I'm a weirdo for saying that, then maybe this podcast isn't for you. But I do this. Like I've done these experiments, or I've used water that's higher energetic
Hmm.
water versus tap water. And I've actually removed all the chlorine in my home, so I no
Hmm.
longer have chlorine coming in at all because I couldn't stand the smell
Wow.
from the tap. So even when
Yeah.
you shower, so my water in my home, aside from what I can't control, it's not that bad. But there is truth to that. Like even right now, I'm wearing a light device
Mm.
and it's light frequencies. So everything, you can't. And the other thing too that I'm going to say for anybody listening to this, we don't have to have science to explain every little thing that relates to our wellness in this world. We have that power within us of knowing without having a giant scientific experiment. That's actually my whole thing, Brenda, is that We are body, mind, spirit, soul, and we've got to take all the different healing modalities that resonate with our being. And what resonates with me might not resonate with you. We're not robots.
Exactly. And another thing too, like some people say, well, Brenda, if I come see you, let's say I deal with a lot of people who have cancer. Oh, but I'm going through, with my doctor. Absolutely go and do what you need to do. This can work side by side. It's not competition. For instance, people who are going through chemo, if they have an energy session, what I notice is they have more color, they are healthier during the process because those icky parts of the chemo can be less icky when they have the support of their energy and their innate system working for them. We have an innate system, and sometimes it gets boggled down by the resistance and blocks. And when we have someone working more in tune with their natural flow, they can heal faster. Sometimes antibiotics aren't working because there's a block. And so it's all working together. I am not against any type of thing a client is using because it's all about allowing them to tap into their natural ability to heal, and it supplements.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing I've noticed being in this space of social media is that there's so much of this energy healing, energy this, I'm an energy healer. Use these spells and witches and this and like it's so overwhelming for people. How do you know what's real, what's fake, what like how do you know?
You're asking a very tricky question here, and I'll explain it. During my journey, have walked into the hands of some bad energy healers who had malice intent. How I had no discernment. I trusted with everything. With everything, there's the good and the bad. And if you're in a pretty bad spot, what happens? You might attract a psychic reader that's not that good. You might attract an energy worker that's not doing the right thing. And it always blows my mind that someone said, well, I went to this energy worker. They didn't have a website. It was in their home. The girl didn't even look healthy. And I didn't want to lay on her table, but I did. And Brenda, I think she sucked my energy from me. I go, what made you do that? So I collect people who've gone to the wrong healers out there, and they're not healers, they say they are. So with anything, do your due diligence. Look for reviews. Ask to speak with, like, sometimes I get people, I do a discovery call with everyone, and if they want to talk, I can give them handfuls and handfuls of clients I've worked with to make sure that they're comfortable working with me. Because if you feel hesitation, don't work with that person. Run the other way. It's
Yeah.
with anything. If you're getting a bad vibe about your dentist, would you let them work on your teeth? No. So you have to ask for discernment with this thing. So yes, there are some really beautiful healers out there, and there are some that are not. And it's about discernment, going within, and never feel pressured. Never feel pressured. Even if someone comes for a session, I always give them the option after we speak. If you want to go, you can go. They don't go, but they can if they wanted to. Actually, one guy did go. He was a little bit scared. And he said, can I think about it? And he left, and I just let him go. No, no deal. And he came back a few weeks later, says, okay, now I'm ready. I did more research on you. I'm ready. And you know what? I thought, what a smart young man to do that. Right? No
Yes.
offense taken at all. This is your body, your temple. You do what feels good for you.
Yeah,
So
that's
you just have
that's
to
a
be
good
careful
answer.
with everything.
So the other thing I just want to mention is a lot of times we seek out energy healing, spiritual healers when we're in a very low vibrational state. And
Yes.
so that kind of makes sense on what we were talking about earlier, that you may be attracting in that state. So taking time, like you said, to
Mhm.
step away and then use your own discernment, get quiet. I'm always like, I think the biggest problem with this world today, Brenda, is that people don't get quiet enough.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I'm a very quiet person and I still get the messages, Brenda, slow down, go within. Because I get busy sometimes, right? It's that
yes,
recentering. Yeah.
yeah, well, that's why, for me, I do my daily meditations. I do my daily walk, which I consider a meditation. I
Hmm.
consider that as part of my meditation. I don't talk on the phone, rarely, unless my mother really needs to have a conversation. Then I'll talk on the phone. But
Yeah.
but the fact is that I take these moments
Hmm.
without anyone or anything speaking. I say to people, don't listen to my podcast when you're on a walk in nature. Don't
Yeah. Connect.
connect to nature. Because a long time ago, one of the very first shows I did was about the synchronicities.
Mm.
And I think when we don't get quiet, we miss them. Or if we even notice them, we kind of shrug it off to, it's just a coincidence.
And synchronicities don't happen to everyone. If synchronicity starts happening in your life, it's because you're starting to tap into a higher vibration, that magnificence within you. And when they start to happen, it's really cool, right? And like
Yeah.
sometimes it's just so noticeable. Like, how could you not, it has to be divinely guided. But
Yeah.
that is that quiet time. That I've always had my walks in the forest. I love trees. I love nature. I just love to lay in the grass. But I've always been, people always think I was weird because that's what I just love to do. But that's where I feel home. I love being in forest. I used to sit, like, maybe people used to think I was a bit odd, but I used to go into the forest and just sit. And I'd have all these little birds beside me. I felt like Snow White, and that was my happy place. And my parents always knew where to find me, in Etobicoke Creek, sitting somewhere quietly.
See, it's, I just this week, okay, before I went on my European trip, I pulled out old journals because I used to write poetry. I wrote in journals. This is kind of what we touched on earlier. When
Hmm.
we're younger, sometimes we lose that and then we go back to it and realize, oh my God, I love that part of myself.
Hmm.
And so I found an old poem and I put an excerpt of it. It was about nature because I used to write about nature. And so it's interesting that you say that. And then, you kind of go, yeah, whatever. I go for a walk, I'll put on my headphones, I'll listen to a podcast, I'll go and jog and put my headphone. And now it's like, gosh, no, nobody bother me. I'm going on my walk in nature, me and my dog, and I just want to be fully present to those synchronicities because I love
Hmm.
them. Because we get them all
Yeah.
the time. It's just we have to be open to receiving
Too.
them.
Yeah.
So let's get into beam therapy
Okay.
because I'm going to say that the majority of people who are listening have never heard of it. So, is there an easy way to describe what beam therapy is, Brenda?
Um, I'm going to do it as simply as I can. First,
Okay.
the acronym BEAM stands for Bioenergetic Emotional Access Method. It was created over 50 years ago from a medical doctor, Dr. Joan K. Beatty. She actually had a practice in Toronto. She just retired, I believe, last year. And she saved my life. And I fell into beam therapy in her loving arms by accident because my guides knew I would never do something for me. But that's this, my son. I brought him to beam therapy. Huge change in 3 sessions. And he just sat there and I just sat there going, what the heck's going on? I've done podcasts about beam therapy. And, sometimes people in other countries see it and they go, I need to do this. How? I've never heard of it before. So Dr. Beatty is a beautiful woman and she's very quiet and she's very sweet and she's very wise. And she always said, Brenda, you talk too much. And I said, I just want people to know about beam therapy. She says, the right people will find it. So we haven't really ever advertised it too much, but I've just started advertising it more now. I'm not sure how many beam therapy practitioners there are out there. But I remember I taken her class 7 times, and then I became a teaching assistant with her. And with COVID, all that stopped. She stopped doing that because she doesn't like the video stuff. She's more of a hands-on person. But beam therapy she used to tell me, is a catch for all. And I'll just explain it and if you want to interrupt me anytime, is when I get very passionate about beam therapy. It's one method that I do the way I was taught from Dr. Beatty because in honor of her. She spent her whole life doing beam therapy. Medical doctor, I believe, from Monday to Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Friday, she did beam therapy for people. She had a waiting list of 2 years. How I got in so quickly was divine intervention. She connected with me on the phone. She goes, "You need to see me." And I went with her right away and started my sessions with her. So how beam therapy works, the premises of it is we're all already perfect. And we truly are. We're a perfect diamond that we get, we come into our mother's tummy and our consciousness comes in, our humanness comes in, our karma comes in, and our ancestral stuff comes in, and our parents' behaviors and stuff come in, our patterns come in. So now we're born and we already have this diamond that has all these layers of interference, but that's part being human. And we go through our human journey and we have experiences and more resistance comes in. Pretty well, beam therapy is guided by your higher self, your soul. So I'm not doing the work. I am allowing your soul to connect with these beings of light that come in. And they know much more than we do. So we kind of get out of the way and allow them to release whatever is no longer serving with you in a layer. So this is the one thing. This is not a one-time fix, although some clients have these huge shifts with just one session. But most of us, light workers, old souls, have a lot to release. So in a layer, so I'll explain what a layer is. Your higher self creates a layer of stuff that no longer serves you. So it could be 2% of this trauma, 5% of that trauma, negative belief, something you saw that hurt your heart, something that was said that hurt you. So it creates like 1,000 different things in your field. So when I see clients ready for beam therapy, they're in this dark cloud. And then through the process of beam therapy, there's no touching. We're just going through a process. I will guide you through it. Is you're releasing that layer. And once that layer is gone, it never comes back. So what happens is, say heaviness leaves your field. We can call it darkness, heaviness, dense energy. And then what happens is it's replaced by that love, that light energy. So after a session, your energetic field, your light quotient increases, increasing your vibration and your frequency. And so when people leave a session, and the session's not that comfortable for some, everyone has their own unique experience. Some people can cry during it. Some people have old memories. Some people just feel complete peace during it. So I can't explain exactly how you're going to react during it because we're all very different, but I've had it done. And I know the first 5 sessions I had done, I told Dr. Beatty, nothing's happening. Like I don't feel anything, but something in my heart keeps having me come back. And she said to me, this is a long time ago. She said, "Brenda, there's magic happening in your quantum field. And eventually it's going to trickle down. You're just very numb and you have a lot of trauma that we have to get through." Well, after that day, something clicked. After 5 sessions, this trigger in my heart, I felt love for myself I never felt before. And my whole world started to change. Some people get that after 1 session. Some people get it after 2. Some people get it after 5. We're all very different. But it has to do with how much trauma did you have from when you were in your mom's tummy to age 7? Because that's where it's really deep in your subconscious. Some people just had a really great life and something happened in their 20s. They heal quicker. But someone like me who's had a lot can layer by layer by layer. So beam therapy is not a one-time miracle, but it's very powerful and it's a catch for all. Now, for some of you out there who kind of know this kind of stuff, it pulls in things like past lives, ancestral wounds, really deep-rooted belief patterns. You're not good enough. It helps people build confidence. It gets your body, your energy system working. So with beam therapy, which was just like sitting in front of Dr. Beatty and she's doing this thing and I'm doing my thing, my kidneys healed. My scarring on my tissues on my kidneys went away. I had no traces of the beginnings of cervical cancer. My liver started to heal. I was very sick when I first met her because I was a mess. But not only that, my emotions changed, my mental state changed. I found love for myself. So everything started to work. So it's kind of this catch for all. So beam therapy is something that I do with people when they don't have, say, an actual issue. It's just everything. So it's very powerful and it can be done by video, it can be done in person, and how you're going to react during it really depends on you. But where I always tell people when they book that session, warning, you might feel a bit crappy before the session. Your higher self is going into your field, picking out current stuff, things that happened to you when you were a child. We're affected by things we see, what we hear, what we experience. So I grew up in a household where the news was always on. I had so many of these things in my field. I had no idea I was being bombarded by them. So being therapy is guided by your higher self. Your higher self is in charge. It knows what you're ready to release and what's beneficial. But what happens is you get lighter, you get lighter, you get lighter, more connected. And you can always create new traumas, but the stuff that releases in a session, it never comes back. So the one common thing I get from people who've done beam therapy is I feel different. I feel more peace, but I can't pinpoint it. It's a hard to explain the feeling. I always say, try it and see how you feel.
Now, I have to ask because I've had a beam therapy session for you guys who are listening. You kind of go through different categories of like wellness, I'm going to say.
Mhm.
And I know that you do this intuitively. You don't necessarily go through all of the categories on every single session. You kind of have that guidance on what this person is open to releasing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're actually right. So there's 10 phrases we have available to us. But your higher self or the client's higher self is guiding me to use the phrases that are going to act as the main phrase to pull out the energy associated with that. So out of the 10 phrases, usually if someone's doing beam therapy for the first time, we use 3 to 5 phrases. And those phrases are guided to me by your higher self. But what I know is by the time we're done, that entire layer is now gone. And then they might come back a next time and different phrases come up. And they'll always ask, like, why did these phrases come up? It's because I'm being guided that these are the best phrases to use to release the layer. One thing that bothers some people is, let's say someone's been adopted and their biggest issue is abandonment. Abandonment is such a big trauma in their life that one of the phrases is abandonment. And what I've noticed is a lot of times we don't use it the first few times. And they want to use it, but I'm being guided not to use it because their abandonment issues or their challenges are going underneath gently under the other phrases. But if, let's say, we're going to override what I'm being told, which I don't do, I always follow and I respect what the higher self is asking me to do. But let's just say we pretend that we were to override it. What would happen is you're kind of crashing the person or giving them extra trauma to release something when it doesn't need to be that way. Beam therapy is a beautiful process. It's very powerful, very simple, and we try to make it as gentle as possible. And then as enough resistance is chipped away, let's say you have a big trauma, taking like 2%, 5%, then when it gets to a manageable level, we'll start bringing in abandonment in the session.
Mhm.
But we're going on the guidance of your higher self. It's not me doing the work.
And you guys, I'm going to give you an example because this is really, really powerful. This is why I wanted to do a show on this. So, I myself never had physical abuse, whatever, like spanking as a child, but to me that was like everybody was spanked in the 70s. Right? And I've always thought it was a difference between spanking and beating. So I never experienced physical abuse from any relationship in my life. Not my partners, not my parents, nothing. And when I did this session, I was kind of going through all the categories. And then physical abuse was one of the areas. And I kind of lost it, Brenda. You remember.
I do. You had an emotional response to that one.
It was a major emotional response. And the thing is, while I was going through it, I was being shown. Like, it's not like I was like, oh, where did this come from? I was being shown exactly where it came from. Like, um, I'm pretty attuned to myself, my higher self, my intuition. So I don't know if it's that way with you, with every client, Brenda, but it was so powerful because I knew when I was done, I'm like, I just healed some heavy shit that
Yeah.
went back really, really far. And so this is why I wanted to mention my personal experience because I think it's a testament to how powerful this can be.
Yeah. You know what? Everyone's experience is different. The reason I believe you had such an understanding and your guides gave you that information you need to you that would help you is because you can handle it and you've done the work to get to that place. But a lot of people release some really, really tough stuff without even knowing it. They might say, "Whoa, that was uncomfortable," but they don't understand what it was, and they don't need to. A lot of the stuff you released, you don't need to know, but what's happening is you meant to know that, so your guides helped you out with that. And that's beautiful. And not everyone has that response, but there are some people that go, oh, Brenda, I just had this vision. And now
Yeah.
I know why I can't stand the smell of donuts because they couldn't find their kid or their parents and they're in front of a donut store and that smell of donuts made them so sick because that trauma was in their system connected to a donut. So it's really neat. So some people have these like, oh, now I know why I let men treat me this way. It happened from this childhood thing. So everyone has their own experience, is very unique. And some people, Brenda, a lot of teenagers. I love working with I love working with all people, but teenagers are so neat because they don't want to talk. And their parents ask them to come see me. And they sit there and they're doing their thing. And they'll say, Brenda, that was a little uncomfortable. And I don't know what's going on, but I feel better. And this is the weirdest therapy I ever did. It's energetic therapy, let's say. But it's neat because you don't have to have those bursts of emotions. Sometimes they just sit there quietly, release, and they go. And I've had 100 sessions of beam therapy. All right, close to. I think it was like very close to 100. Why? I needed it. And sometimes I just sat there numb and allowed the energy to go. And sometimes I would be bawling during it. And sometimes I would remember and sometimes I wouldn't remember. But I always feel your experience that you're having is exactly what you need. So it's very unique to each person.
Mm. It's very powerful, you guys. Okay. We are over an hour, which is fine. I would love for you to let me know, is there anything that I missed, or is that enough for this session? And we're gonna have to record another one. What do you think?
Well, there was always time to record more because
Oh
there's
yeah.
tons of knowledge out there.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, being therapies, if you feel the call, then have a session and try it. If you want to try my energy, because every practitioner brings in their own abilities. Like I'm a unity field healing practitioner, but when people do it with me, it's different when they do it with someone else. But why the clients I love to work with are the ones that are open because sometimes they'll book, I want a beam therapy, but when they present, I'm being told do this, this, and this instead because they're going to benefit more. So I'll just say, hey, listen, you came for this, I'll do it. But if you let me go with my intuition, this is going to be better for you. So a lot of clients will say, yeah, absolutely, I'm here, let's do it. So if you're booking a session, let's say, just book like a session and let's just do what presents. But if you're really interested in beam therapy, go ahead. But I do a weekly group call. And a lot of people will say, Brenda, let me join that group call first because let me see what your energy's like and see if I can, so that's always an option. And then I have a YouTube channel with a lot of older healings and just things because I'm not like totally out there on social media, so I don't have the time, but I put out there what I can put out there.
Perfect. So where's the best place to start? Your website or
I say my website is that old school because I take these courses and like, oh, you don't need a website, but I love my website. So
yeah.
I would say at sobrilliant.ca.
Okay.
Sobrilliant.ca is the place to start. You can book a discovery call, you can watch my YouTube videos, you can join the healing call for a low cost it's per week I run it. And you know what? It's just getting to know who I am and seeing what it feels like in there. I get a lot of people that say, I was drawn to you. It's usually the light workers in the old souls. And then they'll tell their friends, hey, you gotta go see this girl, Brenda. And they'll look at me like, no way. I bring in a lot of light. And for those of you who are ready, you're ready. And you know what? And sometimes we resonate, sometimes we don't. And it's really just go with your gut. It's your gut feeling.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Thank you so much, Brenda. I really love my connection with you. You have taught me so much.
Yeah, and if I can leave with one thing, we're all magnificent beings. I'm not better than anyone else. No one's better than me. We're all we've all come in with this God essence. We're all divine beings, and it's just that inner diamond's there. And as you start to release that resistance, it starts to show that authentic self is there. So if you're feeling like I'm not good enough or I'm not who I'm supposed to be, it's just the call of your heart calling you to who you truly are.
Mhm.
So do the work, whether it's meditating or reading, invest time in you and have that quiet time each day to reconnect with you. And then you'll know those next best steps for you.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much, Brenda.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Sandy.
I hit stop on that.